Hi, welcome back to Getting Nosy with It. I'm here with Dillon Lange, and we're going to be talking about Dune. So, Dillon, give us some opening comments on the book or the movie that's coming out, and then why you're excited about it.
Well, the book, I really like the book. It's very big. It's a very big thing to try and discuss and to condense into one thing. But it is an epic in the most kind of literal sense, and I'm very excited for the upcoming movie because I think Denis Villeneuve is the perfect director to capture that sense of grand scale that the book has. And also the cast is just astounding for it, in my opinion. I think a lot of the casting is very solid for it. But in general, I'm kind of a new fan to Dune. I only read it last December. I don't know how much you've kind of delved into the series or when you got into it, but
I think I probably was in high school,
mhm.
so in the early 80s. It was one of those books I would pull out and just read and reread and reread. It was one of my go-to books when I wanted to read something.
Mhm.
So I haven't read the prequel type things. I read through whatever came after Chapter House and Heretics of Dune, and then there was another one. I think I can't remember the title, but I read those ones that were in the future with the women who came back and Duncan Idaho basically being the protagonist. So
Yeah.
I read those.
I've read up to Children of Dune, and I know the basic premise of God Emperor. I haven't gotten around to reading it yet. I'm
That's my
currently reading.
favorite. So
Yeah. I'm currently stuck reading House of Leaves, which is an interesting book so far, but we're talking about Dune.
mhm.
uh, but yeah, the whole stuff with Duncan Idaho is really weird and fascinating to me. How that's just he went from just this kind of side character that barely mattered to the first book to he ends up becoming like the main character of the series.
Mhm.
Um, through several resurrections. um, but yeah, the for me, Dune was something that I don't think I had ever heard of it until they announced the new one being made, the
Mm.
movie. Uh, and every time I brought up that I was interested in the new movie, my mom or dad would go, "Oh God, Dune," because they aren't fans of the book. They tried to get through it a couple times, and they can't ever seem to get past like the first 100 pages.
Mm.
Um, and I was at VStock or some used bookstore just last year, and I saw a copy of Dune, and I went, you know what? I'm gonna try. I'm gonna make sure that I can get through this because it had also been a while since I had read a book. Period. Dune is actually what got me back into reading. I took a little bit of a break throughout high school because high school kind of killed my interest in books a little bit.
Yep, read a lot. Yep.
Yeah. uh, but I picked up a copy, and my friend picked up a copy, and my girlfriend picked up a copy, and we all had like a Dune book club. We put like a page limit or a page goal at the end of every week, and we read through it all. My girlfriend really liked it. I loved it for the most part, and then my friend didn't really like it that much. He thought it was okay, which is unusual. Most people have like really strong feelings one way or the other with Dune. I've never seen someone just kind of go, it was fine. um,
So what about the '84 David Lynch version? We talk about that first, since that was I guess really the first adaptation.
oh yeah.
So
Um,
some thoughts on that one?
my thoughts on that were the theatrical version was kind of butchered in editing at the very least. Visually, it was very good visually at the very least. I think those are almost the defining visuals of what everything looks like in the book. It really influenced a lot of like official art and fan art for decades from just looking through various pictures and stuff. They the like I think the still suits are the best still suits done, even still, compared to the Denis Villeneuve ones. I actually still prefer the Lynch ones. And I know you really like the costumes as well for the David Lynch Dune.
I think their costumes were fantastic. The casting was great. As you
Yes.
said, the editing was a mess.
Yeah, I really like the cast. I think ignoring the fact that both Kyle MacLachlan and Sting are too old for the roles, they are actually really solid picks for the roles. And in fact, in Dune Messiah, which takes place like 10 years later, I thought that Kyle MacLachlan would have actually been a really good pick for like an older Paul. I love Kyle MacLachlan too. I'm definitely a Lynch fan because I like Kyle MacLachlan.
That's where he was discovered, right? So
Yeah.
his entrance into Hollywood.
Yeah, and his entrance into just David Lynch. David Lynch notoriously hated the production of that film. He had a lot of difficulties with the production of that film. His film was going to be almost like 3.5 hours to 4 hours long, and they told him you can't do that, and they forced him to condense like the third act, which in the book is already a very condensed third act. It moves really quickly, which there's a reason why that we can get into later. But that third act in the movie, he had to just condense into like one 4 or 5 minute scene and then do the final fight with Paul and Fade. But
that very awkward voiceover bit that sort of takes you through 2 or 3 years of
the voiceover is something that bothers a lot of people about that film. My dad and I watched it together for the first time as soon as like the night that I finished the book. I was like, Dad, do you want to watch the David Lynch Dune? Maybe that might help in some way and like get his interest in the book. And he agreed to it. We sat down, and he seemed completely confused for most of the movie. And I had to pause it every once in a while to try and explain what was missing and what they changed. And there's some stuff in that movie that I was kind of confused about why they changed it. Some of the more... It's a very kind of Lynch thing whenever you see the changes, where you see like... for Thufir Hawat, his character ends up getting like poisoned in the book, but it's kind of supposed to be like arsenic, I think. The one where like you take it and you have to keep taking it, otherwise you'll die. It was supposed to be like a secretive thing, and they were putting it in his food. In David Lynch's Dune, he knows that he's poisoned, and he has to get his antidote from milking a cat that is duct taped to a rat. And that was like one of those things that was just like completely weird.
We have Raban walking by a cow and ripping out its tongue and eating it.
Yeah.
Very odd little things.
I would say in terms of, so there's a fan edit of the film that I actually really like for the most part. It cuts out a lot of the, or it doesn't cut out, but it silences a lot of the internal dialogue that a lot of the characters have, but it still has to keep the ones that are like integral. But a lot of the ones that felt kind of pointless, like there's a moment where one of the Fremen tells Paul that he's a Fremen or she's a Fremen, and and in his mind he just goes, a Fremen, and you're like, yeah, we get it. And so stuff like that is kind of removed, and then it added in a lot of the deleted scenes, which touched on aspects of the book that were just missing from the theatrical one. The theatrical version doesn't talk about like the jihad and Paul's kind of anxiety about how every decision he's making could lead to like billions of deaths. And I feel like that took away a lot of the tension from the novel away from the movie. That stuff is back in with this fan edit that took the extended edition scenes. And then it also, overall, it's a much better version of the movie. And it, but the one issue that I have with Lynch's Dune, even if he did get to do just his full version of the movie, is his depiction of the Harkonnens. I think they are kind of overly gross and disgusting, and also a little too cartoonish in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
So then
I don't know what you
there's
think.
the Sci-Fi Channel did a mini series which covered, I guess, two of the books,
Three of the books.
the Children of Dune.
Yeah, they
I saw it.
combined
I don't
Messiah
remember it except I didn't care for it.
and
The costumes were bizarre. The cast was odd. I don't know. It didn't.
they had. I haven't seen it all the way through. I've seen clips of it, and I know that in the first season, for the first book anyway, the first book they had like all the characters were wearing these big hats. It was kind of weird. And who they have as Paul is like this Brad Pitt looking dude. He felt kind of miscast.
Yeah, I think they have Chani in these sort of like furry bikini tops and stuff, and I was like, what? I don't get it. So, but now we have another version, which
Hmm?
when I heard they were making, I'm like, oh, we need another Dune. I mean, it's a big book. There's a lot of stuff in it.
Yes.
I think in a sense, David Lynch, you know, didn't succeed, but on the other hand, I think with what he was working with, he did a lot of good things. So
Yeah.
I was kind of like, that was a decent version, if it wasn't great. Do we really need to do this again? And so, but we are, and they're splitting it in half, but I have no idea are they doing more than one book, or are they just going to split Dune in two?
They are splitting Dune into two parts. Denis Villeneuve has been interviewed several times, and he's just like, it's too big of a book to put into one film. And I agree with that. There was a leaked script that I won't talk about too many details with or anything, because spoilers kind of for a 60-year-old book. But an upcoming movie. But where they're ending it, I think, is kind of interesting because it's more 2/3 of the book is where they're going to end it, apparently.
So, like, by the time he's in with the Fremen, and then
Yeah,
cut it before the big push to go against the Emperor.
yeah. Well, the book itself is actually split into three parts. It says it's three books. They're kind of referred to as chapters in the audiobook. But from my understanding, it's going to end right where like that second part ends. And I think that's fascinating because they will. Denis Villeneuve isn't scared to do longer movies. He isn't scared to do like 2.5 to 3 hour long films. If Blade Runner is anything to go by. And so I think if this ends up being another like 2.5 to 3 hour movie, expanding that third act, that third part of the book, is probably the best decision he could do in terms of making changes. Because we can kind of get into this now. My issue with the third act is that it moves by way too quickly. And I listened to an interview with Frank Herbert from like 1968. It was like the year before Dune Messiah came out. And it's a fascinating interview. It's like an hour and a half long. And he discusses the pacing of the book. And he says he purposefully kind of made it that fast-paced in that last third so that you're still thinking about the book whenever you're done. He was thinking of it as like a rolling boulder down a hill where it builds momentum and builds and builds and builds, and then whenever you get to the end, that boulder is smashing into the house, essentially, and whenever you're done reading the book, that boulder is still going on in your head, which is an interesting experiment and an interesting way to handle a book, I think, but I don't think it worked as well in execution as it could have. So I'm all for Denis Villeneuve expanding that third portion of the book. I don't know what you thought of that third portion of the book. If
It never really occurred to me. I guess I just read it, and I liked it. The one thing that always bugged me about the Dune universe is nobody has a sense of humor.
yeah,
There are no jokes, really. I mean, I guess Gurney Halleck is kind of a little bit of your court jester kind of character for a little while. But basically, everybody is so aware that everything they say and everything they do could possibly result in, the deaths of billions of people.
yeah,
They're constantly guessing and second guessing and triple guessing themselves on, do I move my finger? Do I say this out loud? And you're like, dude, just have a discussion, or go get some off the buffet. But it's always some sort of universe-shattering thing that they have to consider so carefully. And I think the fact that they talk to themselves in the David Lynch movie, even when they really doesn't serve a storytelling purpose, is because they're constantly talking to themselves in the book, because they're constantly wondering, well, if I do A, then this set of things will be set in motion, but if I do B, then this set of things will be set in motion. And it's like, just chill. Sometimes just chill.
I understand. I understand that kind of a complaint. Definitely, Dune and its tone isn't for everyone. And I totally understand why people have difficulties reading the book and getting into the franchise. It's not easy necessarily, and like you said, it's not fun in a lot of cases. There's some exciting and interesting moments, definitely, but it's not a fun book, and it's nearly 800 pages of not fun. And while I don't really have too much trouble with books and movies that aren't fun, I definitely understand why people don't like them, or at least appreciate them, but could think they could be a little bit lighter. I think there's place for both. I love both. I'm a huge Godzilla fan, and Pacific Rim is rad. Like, all sorts of just big dumb action stuff, but also Dune is one of my favorite books.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've read it many times, but it's just when you're looking back and you're like, well, none of these people ever like tell a mock joke to each other. Or
Yeah.
So anyway, some thoughts on maybe the cast of the new movie? Who do you?
So I don't know what you necessarily think of the cast, but I know that me personally, I enjoy a lot of the casting. I think that Oscar Isaac is probably the best working actor right now to get for Duke Leto. I think he captures that perfectly, especially since the book kind of implies that the Atreides are of like Hispanic descent, because of the bullfighting, and there's a couple stuff with the costumes. They're described as kind of more like their uniforms are a bit more Matador-esque. So I always got the vibe that especially the Duke, because he's described with like olive skin. I kind of got the vibe that they're supposed to be descendants of like Hispanics and Hispanic culture. And so I think Oscar Isaac is a great get for that. He's also just a great actor. I love him. He's awesome. I haven't seen Timothy Chalamet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right or not. I haven't seen him in anything. I hear that he's in a lot of good stuff and that he's a good actor, but he's the only part that I'm like, visually he looks good. He looks like a teenage Paul, but I don't know anything about him. Yeah. And then I don't think I've ever seen Rebecca Ferguson in anything. She's playing Lady Jessica. I think one of the more controversial picks is probably Duncan Idaho, Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa, I think, I don't know if he can carry, like if they ever did go on to do the sequel books, I don't know if he could necessarily carry the weight of that character later on in the series, but I know that he can at least capture the idea that they kind of retroactively make that character a little bit more charming, because he's not very well fleshed out in the first book. In the second book is whenever he comes back, and he's kind of even described with like a twinkle in his eye, even though he has the like metal eyes. And that's I think he could capture that aspect very well. But I don't know what his actual like acting chops are like. He said that he was very intimidated whenever he was in a scene with Oscar Isaac, Timothy Chalamet, the guy that's playing Gurney. I'm blanking on names. Like Thanos. Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem, I think, is who. Yeah, he's playing Stilgar. Which another aspect that I think this movie is doing very well with the casting is actually casting people of color for the Fremen. The Lynch film is a very white film, and I think to accurately depicts like a desert tribe of people who have been on this planet for thousands of years. They would be a little bit darker skinned. Zendaya, I've heard she's great in this HBO show called Euphoria. Otherwise, my only exposure to her has been like the Spider-Man movies. So I'm not too confident in her necessarily, but she is apparently a good actress. So I'm supporting her. I'm in support of most of the actors here. Who do they have? They haven't shown any pictures of any of the Harkonnens, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know who's playing that or the Emperor.
Uh,
Cast an Asian person to be Dr. Yui, so again, we've got a Asian person in an Asian role, so they didn't wash that.
Yeah. The Emperor hasn't been cast, and neither has Fade, actually. Fade has not been cast either. My personal theory is Fade and the Emperor's role are so... Well, the Emperor isn't even in the book until the last
couple of chapters.
Last couple chapters, last 100 pages. So my theory is he's not going to even be in the first part. He's just going to be referred to. And Fade, his role isn't that integral to the first portion of the story. I think that you could build him up a little bit for the second movie, expand his part a lot with the second movie if you're going to expand that third part of the book. And then I think a great just cinematic entrance for that character would be the gladiator scene from the book. I think that scene would really help. First off, it's cool visual to open your movie on you. You could even do that. And also I think it would help kind of give you an idea of what this guy is like pretty immediately. But in terms of the rest of the casting for the Harkonnens, they've got some good picks. Vladimir, no, not Vladimir. Well, that's the name of the guy. The guy that's playing Baron Harkonnen is Skarsgård, Stellan Skarsgård. Apparently, people who have seen him say that he looks disgusting, which is appropriate. I think the only Harkonnen that should be disgusting is the Baron, because he is a gross man. But he's intelligent. That's the scariest part about him for me.
All right. Okay, so any last thoughts on Dune before we wrap this up?
I think more people should give it a shot. Try to stick with the book a little bit longer. Because even though it's referred to as the best-selling sci-fi novel of all time, the amount of people who've actually sat down and read all of it seems very minute, very small. And I think it's a really good book that has a lot of interesting ideas and concepts that might inspire you to get back into reading like it did for me, or it might get you into reading. I think the way that it's structured is just very interesting, and it's probably top 4 favorite books now. I would definitely recommend trying it before the new movie. If you're interested in the new movie, watch Villeneuve's other films like Sicario, Prisoners, Enemy, Blade Runner, any of those to get an idea for how he is, what kind of director he is. But yeah, I don't know. I like the book. I think more people should try and read it.
All right, great. So that's some thoughts on Dune. Thanks for joining us. Remember to hit those like and subscribe buttons and also the bell notifications so you know when I put up more videos. And we'll see you again later. Bye-bye.